I used to be an English teacher, and I remember the first day I went into the classroom as the teacher, and this was a undergraduate school. And, I went up to the front, but not behind the desk, sort of in the front of the desk, so I wasn't so separated from the students. And the students came in, and they were looking around, and I'm thinking, oh no, they have no idea that I'm the teacher, even though I'm older than they are, but because they haven't had that experience. This is not very recent, but they don't have that experience of being around teachers with visible disabilities. Certainly people who have invisible disabilities, yes, but not visible disabilities so much. And so we had this class, and one of the things I had people do was talk about a lot of their interests and their backgrounds and all that kind of stuff, and to kind of pick what interested them the most. And I did one about myself on the blackboard just to give them an example of what I meant. And when the class was over, a student came up to me, and he said, I'd like to ask you kind of a private question, but I didn't want to say anything in front of the rest of the class. And I said, sure. And I was sure he was going to ask me something about, my wheelchair or this or that. And he said, you said that you like to play the piano. He said, would you be willing to give me piano lessons? And I thought, how close-minded am I that I made the assumption that he was so obsessed with my wheelchair when the thing that caught his eye was that he needed a piano teacher. And I just thought that was a really great moment, Accessibility to me means that people can go about their business without thinking about it too much, without thinking about the logistics of it too much, without not having to worry about, can I get in here? Can I see this? Will there be an interpreter? For people who have non-visible or non-apparent kinds of disabilities, will people be wearing heavy perfume that will make me sick? Or, if I have a kind of panic disorder or something like that, will I be chastised if I'm in an enclosed space and have to leave? And accessibility extends to people who don't have disabilities as well. I mean, I've sort of come to see my connection with people with baby strollers who can't get around because of the bumpy sidewalks and all the, quote, historic areas, which are mostly not historic, the bricks on the ground. And so I think it's mostly about not being always conscious of how to get from point A to point B, and focus on why I'm going from point A to point B. I think in cities there's a growing awareness, both among people with disabilities and people who don't have disabilities. They suddenly see, for example, a curb cut, and they maybe never thought about that before. But I know that I had a friend once who rode his bicycle everywhere, and one day he said to me, these little bicycle ramps are great. They're good for your wheelchair too. And I said, no, they were designed for wheelchairs, but you're welcome to use them as well. And he had known me a long time, but it never even occurred to him, And so I think, it's a growing awareness. We're beginning to get a little more savvy in terms of being more public about what we need, and also connecting with other movements, not just to get publicity, but because we really care about them, and that pushes them to be involved with us, and it allows us to get to know them. I think it's important because it brings together groups of people with whom I have probably ideologically many, many things in common. And instead of us working separately on the same kinds of issues, we can engage together. You can learn from the disability community. I can learn from you. I can learn from all of the people that are involved in it. So there's a collective kind of education. And, I think that's great. I think that's the only way anything gets accomplished is if people work together.